Well, it's been a while since we've spoken. I'm excited to have you here today talking about the IE600, you guys' latest release. I have a lot of questions about this, but I guess for all the people that don't know you here, let's give them an introduction real quick.
Thanks for having me. I'm Jan Köke. I'm the product manager at the audiophile team at Sennheiser. So actually now it's Sonova. We are basically building all the wired high-end headphones that you know and love. So we released the IE900 last year, and it was really well acclaimed. And since then, we still learned a bit, and now the IE600 is basically a cornerstone of really a new kind of tuning that we bring forward, and we are really excited for you to try it out.
Man, I almost don't know where to start this thing because I have so many questions. But the first thing that really comes to mind was I was reading through the press release of this and also some emails in the past, and several times I noticed you guys mention that this is 3D printed. I'm kind of I'm more of a hobbyist 3D printer kind of person here. I've got a lot of the FDM printers, and I've worked with the resin printers before, but I've never seen something quite like this that I've been told is 3D printed. So I guess my question with that is, A, how are you guys printing something of this resolution? And B, what choices led to you guys thinking, all right, well, we need to 3D print this instead of another manufacturing method?
Yeah, very good questions, and I'll start basically from the start, and that we as Sennheiser don't print it, but we work with a partner that is called Tereos. And Tereos is a huge company, so many times bigger than Sennheiser, and they mostly deal in precious metals. And they have one more, let's say, startup inside the company that deals mostly with 3D printing amorphous metals. And that is a very, very specific thing to do.
Right.
So really the highest performance material you can actually use for engineering. It's extremely expensive. And going into the 3D printing as a process, it's not like you have like a kind of, let's say, event where you push through a plastic or something like traditional. But it's something called selective laser sintering, or at least similar to that. So that you have a kind of powder bed, and then you have a laser from above, and it will laser basically the one layer of the product, and then another layer of the powder bed is basically put on top of it, and another layer is then melted on top of it. So in the plastics field, it's usually sintering, but here it's actually melting. So it's not that you just stick goblets of metal together, but you actually melt the material on top of each other, and it's really, really a super high-tech process. So it's really amazing that we could work with them, and that they have such an expertise for it, because producing amorphous metals, I can go in more detail into that later, but it is extremely, extremely demanding. You need really highest purity metals for that, very, very exotic metals. And in total, it's crazy that they managed to do it so reliably for a mass production process. And we are really so happy to have them.
That is very cool. I've heard of processes like that in the past, printers that work on layers of powder like that. Yeah. So I guess what is it about the IE600 that makes it so it has to be printed instead of like other processes you guys have used in the past?
Honestly, it doesn't have to be. It's more that we think about, okay, what would be a really cool benefit for our customers. It's not much about the sound in this case, because the acoustic system within is really already completely defined. So the housing is really mostly for protection and for being really robust and so on. And that is one of the biggest user wishes we heard so we did a lot of user research. I regularly read all the forums, and so we almost always heard, we want it to be really robust, we want it to not scratch easily and so on. I want maybe resale value in a few years. And we actually started talking with Tereos already 4 years ago, and we had some prototypes of the Pro in-ears actually made with their processes, and that actually sparked the idea of the new in-ear portfolio. But at the time we thought, okay, it's just too expensive, we can't afford it.
Right.
As time went on, we heard these user needs again and again and again, and we worked really hard together with Tereos to really make it in a mass-producible fashion. It's still super, super expensive.
Right.
And, but at the time we thought, okay, it's just too expensive, we can't afford it. And as time went on, we heard these user needs again and again, and we worked really hard together with Tereos to really make it in a mass-producible fashion. It's still super, super expensive. but in the end, it's really the most robust material you can use. So I think we have this user need that it should be really as robust as possible and really as visually as have just so much permanency, and actually that it feels so premium. So that was another big user need, that if people pay a lot of money for an in-ear, if they are so passionate about it, that they honestly want to pick it up and they feel already the weight behind it, and that they know, okay, this is something special. And I think that is something that IE600 does just excellently. So you pick it up and know, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah,
and,
it definitely, the second I pick it up, I realize that this is a premium product. Because when I first got it in, I actually didn't know the price point for it. I mean, I could kind of have guessed based off of, well, I've done the IE300, I've done the IE900s. This has to be somewhere between them. But interestingly enough, and this is something that's been echoed from several other people in the community, several other reviewers I know, and people that you know as well, a lot of us actually find this to be even better than the IE900 for our taste. So, I mean, was that kind of the goal? Were you guys just thinking, let's just keep advancing, this form factor we got used to? Or was it just kind of like a happy thing that it ended up being like, hey, this, we stumbled upon something really good here?
It was mostly to find, let's say, different preferences, really, because as it with the sound, with really aesthetics, you have really just people liking different things. And
right.
For the IE900, I mean, you tested it and it's a very analytical sound and so on. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit an IE800 to go.
Yeah.
And I think the design also reflects that really, really well. It's this very high precision milling, and it's really well defined. And okay, basically every little milling line has been really basically programmed to be exactly as it is there. Mm-hmm. So it's a very certain aesthetic that certain people really, really love. And the IE600 not only does something different sonically to a different preference, but it also speaks, I think, on a design level to maybe not necessarily different person, but to a different mood or different preference for what it looks. So I think it's a bit more organic. You see, while it is very, very tight tolerated, so that's really amazing that this is possible with 3D printing.
Oh, yeah.
It still doesn't feel, okay, this is just ultra crazy German precision engineering. It feels premium, it feels weighty, but I think it feels more organic, and I think that reflects the sound also a bit better. So it's for us, it's really that all has to fit together really neatly. The sound, it has to be expressed also with the design, and I think for the IE900 and 600, it's both. It's really a great. It works just so well together.
Yeah, I know that for me personally, this is something I'm really grateful for, is the fact that you guys did it in a very small form factor. Because there are lots of IEMs that I enjoy in the world, but not a lot of IEMs I can comfortably wear for a long duration. Thankfully, this is one of them that I actually can. I was speaking to Critical about this IEM actually, because I figure, I said, it's not quite out yet, but I know Critical has to know this thing exists too. And of course he did, so lucky me. I was speaking to Critical about it, and he said that this was the best dynamic driver IEM, which from him I can only imagine is like the highest praise in the world, because Critical's reviewed everything.
Yeah.
So that said, this thing has to have some special tuning. And we know it's not quite diffuse field. We know it's not, leaning towards Harman or anything else like that, but there is a bit of an elevation in the bass. So I have to ask, what led to the tuning of this IEM? I know you're trying to hit different preferences and things like that, but there must have been some level of extensive research that, landed you guys on this target.
Absolutely, yeah. So great question. And I guess we can go with the bass first, and that is also what I read quite frequently, that we do a lot of very bass-heavy IEMs apparently. That's what some forum goers say, and I find it actually really funny, because when we do internal test listening rounds, then especially for the IE900, some people actually said, well, it's a bit light on the bass side. And I'd say the IE600 and 900 are comparable in terms of bass. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar, I'd say.
Okay.
And there are multiple important aspects to that. So the first one would be just from a psychoacoustic standpoint, the more open a system is, that the closer you can tune it basically to a flat loudspeaker. So a loudspeaker would usually be completely flat, or you have like a taste increase of like 2 dB in the bass or something, and awesome. And then you go into very open headphones like the IE600, and depending on your preferences, you probably boost it to like plus 5 dB or something in the bass, but if you give it plus 10 dB, then it would sound way too much usually. And closed headphones, and a closed headphone with plus something like plus 8 dB bass doesn't sound bad, it sounds right. And then you get into in-ears, which are the most closed form, and just psychoacoustically, it sounds really right if it has a certain bass boost. And in my opinion, the biggest difference is not really the level, whether it's now 10 or 9 or 11 dB of bass boost versus the mid-range, but mostly the slope, how you get there. So if it's bass heavy like IE300, then I feel it can really quickly sound a little bit too, let's say, a little bit congested, or but whatever you want to say, but also warmer. And on the other hand, if you have a very steep slope like we achieved with the IE600, I think then it never really interferes with the mids, and at the same time you have the feeling that is more comparable with loudspeaker listening or with natural music enjoyment. So the problem with in-ears is you don't have this impact of the bass. To feel natural, it needs some elevation. So and that is, for me, also the crux with these target curves and so on, because I see that it's a cool thing to orient yourself with, but in the end, every acoustic system, I think, deserves its kind of own, let's say, appreciation in terms of how much bass does it need, how do the mids sound natural, and so on. And so I think that's a big shortfall, actually. But I can also see that it's a good thing to cling to, so I don't want to criticize it too much.
That's fair. Well, I mean, you're a representative of a company. You have to play the middle ground and all that too.
But not to be dogmatic. So actually, also we can go later, or we can also go now more into the rest of the tuning, into the mids. But there's a lot of people at Sennheiser that think that the IE300 or the 900 are extremely neutral, and I know that a lot of people in the internet would disagree with it fairly hard, and so some reasons of it then go into more aspects like how loud you listen. So if ideally, then a very V-shaped signature can make a lot of sense, and if you listen really at 90 dB a lot, which is probably not recommended, then a very flat sound signature will probably sound more balanced. And you can do that with digital products, of course, but with analog products to do loudness correction is not the easiest thing.
Right.
Let's say it like that. And so I also think, just based on that, which is a discussion which is really invisible, I think, in the internet, which is really, really crazy to me, because it influences so much whether you listen at 50 dB or 90. It's a different word. So that's a big point of it. And for example, we had a depression always around 4 kilohertz, and that happens to be where our hearing is the most sensitive. So especially with the loudness correction going on. So especially if you listen quietly, then the IE300 is I think really, really good, and really hard to beat in many respects. So but I'm not a dogmatic person. So some people said, we kind of need to push forward or Sennheiser tuning or something, but I feel let's just put out the choices. People will buy what they buy, and I think it's great that we can kind of are loud enough to try to make an impact. So also that I think that like having slightly reduced 3 or 4K may increase the perception of space, which is always missing in ears. But in the end, we can build a lot of products. We can give people the choice, and let's just see what's working out, and let's just totally happy with it. That's the biggest thing, of course.
That's a good way to do it. I mean, if you have a lineup, people are going to vote with their wallets on what they like. And that works, because a lot of people do like a lot of different sounds. So this is starting to make a bit more sense to me. Yeah, because at lower listening levels, a bit more of a V can sound a lot more neutral. At higher levels, it would be more emphasized. And where you said you were kind of going for more of like the speaker experience on that does make sense. I do like that you guys are kind of doing what I think a lot of the audio community misses, which is mixing, objectivity and subjectivity. Obviously, you guys are a huge company. You can make something, perfectly flat to a target if you want to. But obviously, that something that's going to be 100% perfectly flat to a target isn't exactly what everyone's going to love the most. And that said, even then, if something was perfectly flat to a target, there's so much variability in everyone's HRTF that, an average flat to a target isn't really going to be flat to most people.
Yeah.
So I do have an appreciation for the fact that you guys are kind of combining those two. I was curious also, do you have any comments on I know we talked about bass and mids. Do you have anything about the treble tuning this? Because I noticed that does also have a bit of a unique sound to it.
Yeah, let's say it's always for our audiophile in-ears a bit of a balance act, because on the one hand we feel that the brilliance, so the response above 10K, is equal to an audiophile earphone or headphone. So we feel if something doesn't have much going on above 10K, then for me personally it's not much of an audiophile headphone, even if it's well tuned below. I feel like the brilliance, the air, the little bit of extra, that's, I think, what really separates the good from the bad, if you will. And the problem is that if you pull up the air, so to speak, and you, for example, have a lighter transducer with a lighter coil or something, the treble that is usually criticized, so 6, 7, 8 kilohertz, also rises with it. And so we stand basically in the door angle and think, okay, what is now the perfect balance between having brilliance and having really nice treble that on the one hand shines and can be sparkly and can be exciting, but it shouldn't be annoying or fatiguing. That's of course not what we want to achieve. And even then, there's still some preference. So I still remember. So we worked a whole year on the IE900 to get the treble where it was. So that was really a huge effort, and we went to something like 50 revisions of the resonator chambers to get it just right. So it was really a crazy act. And so we really spent so much time on working it out. And then I went to a local dealer and I asked him, so what did your customer say about it? And he said, yeah, the first customer wanted more treble. And I was like...
Oh, gosh.
But again, it's preference. There are some people that prefer more treble, and I think in the end it's just perfect the way it is right now. And the IE600 now is a little bit different. So and that's now the huge problem with in-ears, that treble has just so much variance with people. It's give it to 10 different people and get 11 different opinions on the treble, how it's done. And so I think the IE600 and 900 treble are very similar in terms of quantity, if you will. I'd say the IE900 is smoother, so it's a bit more. There is much more precision going on in trying to smooth out the resonances. However, the tuning of the IE600 as a whole, so the mids are more present, is more forgiving to the treble, and it uses fewer resonator chambers, so it's more of a rough job, so to speak, to take out the resonances, but I think in the end they are very comparable. As I said, the IE900 is slightly more accurate, but again, it can vary from person to person. They're both great products, I think, in their own right.
Yeah, definitely for my own personal ears, the 600 is definitely the match for me. So I'm curious about this going forward. I know there's only so much you can talk about the future, but what can I take away from this as to where you guys are headed in the future with your product lines? Because, traditionally, like you said, some people on the forums would say this is more of a V-shaped sound. And I mean, if you look at it on a graph, it can be, especially with things like the IE300 and whatnot, which is, definitely a departure from the things we're used to seeing from Sennheiser, like, the famous headphones like the IE600, 650, things like that. Kind of with that in mind, and with these being a bit more of a departure from the normal for you guys, what does that say about kind of like the future of where your products are headed? Do you think this is going to be like more of a thing we'll see more and more often, especially like in the bleeding over into the world of like over-ear headphones? Or is this more just like hey, let's try it and see what people think?
No, it's a very good question, and I'd also divide it into different categories. So for the in-ears in particular, this is clearly a cornerstone, I think, within our portfolio. So this is where we now have a really, I think, a departure of how we used to tune. And I also want to say that it seems strange to me that people put so much weight onto having like a perfectly target curve fitting product at extreme high price level, so that they say, okay, this headphone costs 5,000 euros. Now it has to hit the target curve exactly, or it's bad.
Right.
Because you buy the very expensive headphone for its extreme technical capability, at least in my mind. And if you're such a fan of target curves, you can still equalize to your heart's attack. It feels strange to me, and these target curves are usually derived from just statistical models of what most people would prefer. So going forward, I'd rather have the most balanced or the most target curve fitting products being also very accessible, because if that is a product that most people would prefer, that's also the product that most people could afford. So, and as you go more into the niche markets and different preferences, then it makes sense to have them on a higher price level, so that people that really have the strong preference for it, they are more likely to spend that a bit much more money for that. So just speaking about in-ears, but it's in general a thing that I find peculiar about the communities.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It does seem like for some reason everyone does think that the more money you spend, the more it has to be exactly flat to a target. It's like, well, you can get something that does that. It's relatively affordable, so obviously everyone can do it. It's not like this insane task to make it happen. But there are, I guess I shouldn't go out and name every brand in the world that does that, but there are some really affordable things that are perfectly target adherent that a lot of people do praise, that are, really good, but you don't see them on like the top 10 lists. You don't see them on like the things people say are like the best things they've ever heard in their life, which isn't to say they can't be, but yeah, people go into the high end because they want a unique experience. They want something that, has that technical performance. And they want something that's not going to sound like the rest. So yeah, I definitely have an appreciation for that. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there on that tangent.
No. The going forward also with the headband products, I also see that we have a very good heritage, that we can be very happy, and that I'm every day really amazed by that. The 600 series in particular, that this has been built like now, pretty much exactly 30 years ago. It has been developed, and really in the baby steps of computer simulation, that these were really the first times they could use a computer to kind of simulate how a transducer behaves and so on. And they had to wait for weeks to get a simulation of the transducer done. So it's really incredible that they managed to completely nail it. So I'm really in huge awe of that. And still, of course, and I have just huge respect for that. But still, I feel that, of course, music taste has shifted a little bit over the last 30 years, and I think that bass in particular is probably not the strongest point in all of our over-ear products.
Yeah.
So we are certainly working on that.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. I mean, I'm one of those people that I hope the HT650 is made forever. I specifically have 2 pairs here. That way, if something ever happens to one, I always have a backup. But I do add a little bit of bass to it every time I use it. I have like a desktop equalizer, and I just a little bit of sub bass, just because it's like you were saying, with open back headphones, they do kind of need a little bit. And yeah, that headphone was made a pretty considerable amount of time ago. And sometimes I do the same with the the HT800S, which I have here. So I'll be curious to see what you guys whip up there, because if by God you guys come up with an HT650 that has just like a little bit of an extra sub bass shelf on it, I'm pretty sure that that'll be the end of audio for a lot of people.
Yeah, so at the same time, I want to say that I have really huge respect for the HT650, so I know that people love it so much, and so I'm, let's say, a bit afraid of touching them. So going forward, I rather use the newer models, so to speak, as a prototype product to test the way forward, and if people like it, then we can look into implementing it into the classic, so to speak. But yeah, let's see. I just don't want to rush things in with these regards.
That's definitely the safe way to go with it. I think if tomorrow the HT650 suddenly was something completely different, even if it was better, I think people would probably riot for a few days.
Exactly. I'd have to fear for my life.
Yeah, just go into hiding for a little while. Don't worry about it. It'll all blow over. So since I did that one interview a while back where I spoke to Sennheiser about the whole acquisition with Sonova, a lot of people were a bit worried. Well, what's going to happen? Does this mean the end of the line for audiophile products, things like that? I definitely think that this is reassuring in the sense that, we see you guys are still doing things that cater to audiophiles, and it seems like that's still a pretty high priority. But how do you feel about it? I mean, because it's been a while since then. So, I'm sure that, Sennheiser and Sonova, everything's kind of starting to come together. Things are starting to fall into place. So what does the outlook still look like? Is it about the same as it was before?
Yeah, so absolutely. So now the acquisition is final. So basically we are now part of Sonova, the consumer part and audiophile with it. And it's really amazing to see because the colleagues from Sonova and especially the management are really huge fans of audiophile. So they really have passion for it, and they just see the value this brings to the company. So it's not just about name or it's not just about heritage, even though it's an important part, of course, but really that this is just such an exciting business to be in. So it's really just attractive and for them a huge playing field in the future. So I'm super happy, really, and I'm really looking forward to where we'll go. But I can just reassure you that that development of audiophile headphones will go on as before, and we'll work really hard to make all of you happy. And on the same side, we have the audiophile factory in Ireland, so where all audience users are built, where our high-end headphones are assembled. And this crew also is just, for me, the heart and soul of Sennheiser, because we can think up nice headphones, but if nobody is there to build them, then it's more of a pipe dream. So,
right.
So a dream team, so to speak, and I just really look forward to the next years.
Fantastic. And actually, I don't know if I'm spoiling anything here, but I was speaking with Paul about potentially going out and checking out that facility and doing some videos out there. So maybe that'll happen. If you want to see that, make sure you get subscribed, because if you're watching this video and you stuck around to this part, you probably won't want to miss that. But I guess that aside, that really wraps up all the questions I have. So the red carpet's open if you want to say anything to the audiophile community. Here's your shot. Yeah,
just keep being passionate about it and keep listening. That's the biggest part of it. So not just looking at graphs, even though it's really important to understand what you're listening, but really be open and just give everything a shot and see what you like. I think that's just a really essential part of it. Really listening, trying to understand what you hear, but really be open about it and see what you like and what you don't like. It's really about your personal listening. It's not about some scientific work, even though that's maybe behind it. So yeah, just keep being awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that we have you back on the channel sometime soon. I'm sure everyone else will enjoy that as well. And it looks like 2022 is shaping up to be a pretty good year.
Definitely.
Well, that is going to wrap this one up. Guys, if you liked this video, please leave a like down below, a comment letting me know what you want to see in the future, or if you had any questions about this video. If you want to get active in the community and support the channel in the process, I have a Telegram chat you can access through my Patreon. And as always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until the next one, guys. Peace.